Um, okay, so this is, like I said, it gets a little technical, but I don't know how else I can start with, from the beginning. So, like I said, I said the timetable method of operation. And so there was no signals, there was no train orders. The railroad was run strictly by strict adherence to the timetable. And in order to look at that and understand it well, we have to talk a little bit about some of the rules that went along with that. So the rule book that went with that, or that's still pretty much in the background today, but the superiority of trains is pretty much non-existent today. Take the Canadian to the to Vancouver, and you'll find that there's no superiority of trains. Anyway, so superiority of train. A train is superior to another train by right, class, or direction. Right is conferred by train order, class, and direct. And no, sorry, can't even read my own stuff here. Right is conferred by train order, class and direction by timetable, and right is superior to class or direction. In single track, direction is superior as between trains of the same class. Trains of first class are superior to those of second. Trains of second class are superior to those of third, and so on. Single track trains in the direction specified by timetable are superior to those to trains of the same class in the opposite direction. So that's kind of hard to take in or understand. So I'll ask for the next slide. And so this is a 1918 timetable of the Maynooth sub. In order to get it a little larger, we cut some of the bottom off, but so that you could see things. But I'd like to draw your attention to a couple of things, and I'm not sure how this works on the Zoom thing, but it doesn't. Okay. Okay. We'll go up to the northbound trains. Here, I should give you what's, or we'll share what's highlighted. So I just wanted to show you, this is a piece of railroad that's being operated entirely by timetable, pretty much. While there is train order offices, sorry, over there, so it's a little bit more advanced because they're into train orders by this time. But at the top there, you'll see that these are northbound trains, and it's the inferior direction. You'll see class. 61 is a first class train. You see the three beside it are second class, and that they're mixed trains, different days of operation. And then if we go over to the other side, you see that the southbound trains, that's the superior direction. And again, you've got one first class and three second class trains. So, excuse me. So, based on that superiority of trains that I just gave you, that determines, who's got right over whom. The next thing I'd like to draw your attention to is, it's a little hard to see on this slide. I guess, is there any point in turning these overheads off? Would it brighten it up at all? Oh, maybe, yeah. Okay, it's pretty hard for you guys to see, but you'll see that some of the times on this timetable are highlighted in bold. Like in the first one we're looking at is at Wellman here, and if you go across Wellman, you'll see that on the other side there's another train that's their time at that station is highlighted as well. So that is an indication that there's a meet. Okay, so that's how the crews would look at it and say, oh, I'm supposed to meet 65 is supposed to meet 66 at Wellman. And Then they got to look at their, think about what I just read to you in the rules about superiority of trains. That's going to determine who takes the siding and who holds the main. The superior train is going to is going to hold the main. It back at this time probably depended a little bit on either what railway it was or what by subdivision, but eventually it became more or less standard. So east and south were superior to north and west, generally across Canada, with some exceptions. Pardon me? Quite likely. Good question. I think you're right. Yes. Yeah. Okay. So what I guess I won't point out every one of them, but there's a lot of bold spots on here, and you'll like every time you see one, you'll find a corresponding one on the other side. So there's this timetable contains a lot of meets. The problem with this system, no, I'm getting ahead of my game, so I'll leave that for now. I guess while we've got it up, I'll point out a little bit of the problem. Is that's all very well and good when all the trains are running on time. Where it goes awry is 64 here at Belmar is the superior train and due there at 10:05. What happens if he breaks down and he's 2 hours late? The whole railroad basically comes to a stop because 63 can't go anywhere until he identifies that superior train at Belmar. And so we'll get into, this is how train orders came about. But while we've got a timetable in front of us, I just wanted to point that out. Okay. Okay. Early signal devices. The ball signal was introduced in 1832. In the picture I've taken here, which I took in 1975. So here's a ball signal still in use in 1975, and I'm not sure. I think it lasted a while even after that. And I think if you go to the Conway Scenic Railway Museum, they've moved this thing here. But it's hard to see on the slide. But below the ball, there's a bracket that's empty in this picture, but that would have had a lamp in it so that it created a night signal, because it's pretty hard to see a red ball against the dark sky. Yeah. So this was a crossing of a Maine Central and a Boston. Yeah, Boston, Maine, and Maine Central. So yeah, I was there and took the picture in 75 because it's a pretty historic thing to be around at that stage. It's a little bit hard to see, but there's the other ball is over here. And everybody's familiar with the railway term. I'll get you in just a sec. Everybody's familiar with the railway term high ball. This is where it came from, because this ball is in the lowered position. This one's halfway up, and if it's all the way up, it's clear that the track is clear, and therefore we can highball. And so that's where that term came from. But when you come up to this diamond, because this is in the caution position for if you're going on that track, the train would stop, go over to the signal, look both ways on the opposing track, and then raise the ball. And that was the signal for the engineer to start the train across the diamond. Okay, sorry, you had a question. Depending on the location, they're in some of the, like the earliest applications of this, there was an operator there that raised and lowered the balls. By the time this picture was taken, it was, I believe it was the crews that were doing it themselves. So they would come up, stop short of the diamond, like I say, look both ways and then raise the ball. But there's sort of, you know, pen and ink illustrations showing a guy hoisting the ball up there, and hence the you know, the shanty here that he would. Oh, okay. Yeah, that's right. Not far from Mount Washington. Or he could leave it there. Like, I'm not sure why it was put in or left in caution here. But he like, if there was another train on the same railroad came along and the ball was high, he can go, because the opposing train hasn't got a high ball, so he ain't going nowhere. So I don't think there might have been a rule in this case to lower it or something, but it's when I took the picture, it was in the caution position. But I don't know any particular, if you leave it to the crews, why change the position? The next train along already has the high ball and away he goes. Okay. Next rudimentary method of protecting a diamond crossing is referred to as a smash board. And this is another situation, or at least, sorry, I just said if you had a high ball, you could keep going if you approach the diamond. In this case, it's an all stop situation. So every train has to stop here, walk to the diamond, look both ways on the opposing railway, and this thing is hinged, and it's got a rope or chain over here to a post, and you swing it across the opposing railway and hook it down, and now you own the track. So you could model that. I've never seen it on a model railroad, but you give me an idea. Okay, well, there you go. So I knew that there was some people, and actually I thought of you when we get to flag stops, because I know the detail that you put in the models that you know, I don't know whether you've got this on your on a station on your layout, but anyway, so yeah, a smash board. Very common in Michigan, and light density branch lines often had these in Michigan. I'm not sure what year I took that picture, but it would be, you know, in the 80s or 90s. Yeah, it's reflective. So, but you know, just like a switch target really has been mounted on the gate. Yeah. So smash board. All right. Yeah. Okay, so we're going to eventually start talking in a few moments about interlocked diamond crossings, but here's an example of a non-interlocked crossing at grade. This is on some of these pictures have been that I've taken, or they've come from CN, and I think this is on the Marmora. But anyway, this was more like smash boards. I tried to get a smash board when I was VP operations for Trillium Railway, a short line. I tried to convince Transport Canada to allow us to put a smash board in St. Thomas, and they refused. So we never got one, even though it was in common use across the river in Michigan. So the standard for a non-interlocked diamond in Canada was this type of arrangement. So a stop sign, and it's you know, we're back to describing the ball thing. You stop the train, the brakeman walks up, looks both ways, says it's clear, okay to go, and you hope the opposing train, well, the opposing train is going to have a stop board as well, and you hope that he's you know, he's not looking at a bunch of TH&B black painted gondolas going over the diamond in the middle of the night. But anyway, that's the way it was done in Canada. Okay. No, because it was, yeah, it would be in the timetable in the footnotes, and it's a mandatory stop. Okay, so we're going to talk a little bit about semaphores, because before we move on to train orders, we need to have some idea of semaphores, although I'm going to distinguish between semaphores and train order signals, but that comes later. So here's an early semaphore design from 1841, and it was literally, you know, there was an operator there that cranked it out and brought the train to a stop, presumably on the dispatcher's directions, you know, stop number 41, or he may have had a situation where like the rule book might have said, you got to maintain a 20-minute block behind trains. So one goes by, he puts the red block on, or the danger block, and 20 minutes later he removes it. But this is a manual crank situation to raise the blade. It drops down and it drops inside the mast. Yeah, and then next slide, we'll see what Norm's talking about. Here's an early CP. This is actually a train order signal, but here's an early CP signal, and when it's raised, it goes up inside that box. I think maybe not on that one, but certainly CP had them. Anyway, an early kind of crude signal. Yeah, I think you're right, because there's kind of a like a window or something there.
They only lasted about 10 years, I think.
Okay, so we're going to talk about, we're going to get a dispatcher involved. So the first thing I talked about was the timetable method of operation. So back in 1851, Superintendent Charles Minot on the Erie Railroad is on an inferior train, stopped, waiting the superior train, which is broken down and is running hours late. And by that time, commercial telegraph had been installed at the stations for people to send commercial telegrams. It had never been used for railway in any purpose. So Minot decides to intervene, and he calls has the operator call the next station up, and has this train showed up? No, not here yet. And he does this, and finally he finds out the location of this superior train, and he decides to. He's the superintendent, so he issues an order that train is not to advance beyond such and such a station. And then he tells the train crew, we're okay to go. That train, you're not going to see that train until you get to at least, C. And the train crew refused. So I think Minot, I think as the story goes, Minot actually had to run the engine because they're saying you're violating the timetable. But that was how train order dispatching came to be. And even, like a few years ago, the rule book would say that like when we still use train orders, it would say it would, issued over the signature of the superintendent or whatever. But it was, the train dispatcher. So anyway, this is a CN dispatcher in Montreal. It's issuing train orders using telegraph. And you can see his sounder in the right here where he'll hear the repeat. Okay, Malcolm, next. Dispatcher's telephone, I'm not sure what year it came into being, but it largely replaced telegraph. telegraph Morse was still being used up to 1971. One of the earliest positions I held was a train order operator, and I hired on in no, not 74. Anyway, I managed to be just beyond this window, so I didn't have to learn Morse. That's the point I'm trying to make. Anyway, you can see the train orders hanging on the hooks here, waiting to be delivered to the proper train. And this guy is still using the key there.
When they use Morse code, did they have to use like special kind of codes or a shortened version of what they wanted to ask? Because Morse code takes a long time to get a message.
They were called lightning slingers for a reason. I've actually seen a competition where, and I forget where I've seen it, but on TV or yeah, where they had a competition between young kids doing text messages and operators using Morse, and it was pretty much a tie or they beat them. The Morse guys beat them by a little bit because somebody else saw that. So anyway, yeah, no, they were pretty fast at it, and you had to have a hell of a good ear to, because I've listened to it and it's all I couldn't pick out a single letter. So okay. Well, I guess what I wanted to point out here is once the Morse was gone, the trains were were dispatched via the train dispatcher's phone, and this is very common arrangement here, because the operator had to write out the train order, and that he needed a hands-free system. So his microphone is on an accordion, and he's got a set of earphones on, and there was a pedal in the floor which was push to talk. So and there was a bell or ringing system. So when the dispatcher wanted to issue a train order to this office, he would ring up that office, and then the operator would put his headset on and everything and respond to the dispatcher, and the dispatcher would tell him, here's a train order, and the guy would say that he was ready to take it, and then he would start dictating it. And but he had a hands-free situation, one hand to hold the bundle of train orders and the other to write it out. Or in my day, I did it on a typewriter. But I managed to have one of these in my basement. Yeah. Yeah. I believe this is CPR at Glacier. So.
You can purchase those, but they're quite expensive.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so part of the here's where we start to get into signals, because part of the train order dispatching at remote locations and everything is that the operator had to have a way to tell the train that he had orders for him. So he had a train order signal. So pretty basic stuff here. The three basic colors on the railway, red meant stop, yellow was caution, green for proceed. But a little bit of interesting history here. Excuse me. You get into the development of glass, and apparently green was one of the last colors that they figured out how to make. And so originally, the green was replaced by white, and so there was white. And like when a railroader talks about signals, he'll say, well, a clear signal. So does that originate way back in history when the when it was a white signal, or is it based on the track ahead is clear? Not sure what the origin, like why we talk about a proceed signal as being clear. But anyway, I forget, I don't think I found, oh, sorry. Oh yeah, there is another piece of history here. So green was last invented, clear glass was used instead. The problem with if a red lens cracked and fell out or whatever, it changed the signal to, just the bulb now, so it's white. And so it wasn't fail safe. And so there was a need to develop the green, because in 1915, this very issue caused a rear end collision where a passenger train ran into a freight on the Pennsylvania Railroad. So there was a need to develop the green. Okay.
Doug, question for you.
Yeah.
When you talk a bit about some,
Yeah. We're going to do more detail here. Yeah.
up or down.
I can talk about it. I don't think I included a picture of a lower quadrant. I might have, but yeah. Okay. Next. Okay, so here's a typical train order signal. This one happens to be CN at North Bay. Very hard to see in this picture, but there's red, green, and yellow lens in the signal, and that constituted your. Well, I'm going to get to the night signal next anyway. But anyway, for day signal, you had a blade. I've asked the question many times, if you've really studied this sort of thing, the CPR used two different kinds of blades. CN was always used a flat end blade, but you'll see some CPR blades were rounded on the end, and even the white band followed that curve. And no one's been able to offer me an explanation why they had two different kinds of blades. But anyway, I'm calling it a blade. A lot of railroaders will call it a paddle. And I guess to try and bring a little bit of model railroading into this, I have one on my layout. These are commercially available, in HO or whatever scale you happen to. Well, I don't know about other scales, but mine's HO. Yeah, the back side of the blade is painted black. So this. Well, they're both at stop here, but this is red and white, and this is just black on that side. The other side of it's red and white. So this is the day signal for a train approaching in that direction. Yes. Yeah. Okay. Next.
Just as an aside, there's an Arduino project on Facebook page of an in-scale working semaphore driven by an Arduino servo.
Hmm.
There's a project.
Okay. And sorry, just back up for a split second. I'm sorry. I just wanted to point out that there's rods. Like this particular train order signal is across the track from the operator's office. In many, many, many cases, the most common one was mounted on the front of the station. But there's there's rods here that raise and lower these, and in the operator's office, there's big handles that he used to raise and lower it. So the dispatcher would come on and tell him that he had and we'll get into in a moment, we'll get into Y orders and R orders. But anyway, he'd say, copy a Y order, which Y yellow. So before the operator did anything else, he would drop the board to yellow. And then he would say to the dispatcher, SDY, whatever the location was, North Bay, or in this case, he would say SDR, North Bay. And then the dispatcher would say, okay, the signal's in place. Train can't go by it because he's got a stop signal. And here's the order now, and start copying. Yeah, I never heard of any, but I I was an operator, but I worked at a station that had no signal. So when I got on the phone, instead of saying SDY or SDR, I said NS horn pane. No signal horn pane. Okay. So that was a 3-position train order signal, which is the most common, but on branch lines, they also used 2-position train orders. So this one is only capable of showing clear or green or red, like you can move it, and there's really a standard switch lamp here that turns when this turns. So if he had well, we'll get into picking up orders on the fly, but anyway, just to show you a different type of train order signal. So back to what you want to model. You want to have a 3-position signal or a 2-position signal. Okay. So, here's I think this is Parkdale, a clear train order signal. We saw the North Bay one was at stop. Well, here's one that's at clear in both directions. So that means the operator has no orders for either eastbound or westbound trains. So if a train had to identify what the position of the train order signal was as he approached it. So, and it was called across the cab. So the first guy that saw it, clearboard Parkdale, and then the other person in the cab would respond clearboard. And the same thing happened at the tail end. Once the train had passed, the operator helped maintain the 20-minute block required by the rules by dropping the signal to red. And then he'd mark in his book what time the train went by. And then 20 minutes later, he could raise the board, unless in the meantime, he had been given a train order. Okay. In this sort of weak light here, but anyway, there's that's CP Dorval with a clear signal. You can see the green, and of course in the dark you wouldn't see much of the like the headlight would light up the blade a bit, but anyway. Okay, next. Yeah, like if it was fog or something like that, and they know the road like the back of their hand. I had people that worked for me that could actually have a snooze on the couch in the caboose and still, oh, there's a little swish swash there because there's always a rough spot there, and come to and call the head in. What's the signal to Shikac, But anyway, yeah, no, if they couldn't see the signal, then it's when in doubt, the most restrictive signal must be adhered to. So even if it was clear and he couldn't see it, he had to think it was a stop because there's doubt. So here's this is St. Anne's, Manitoba, and a signal displaying caution, yellow. Okay. So there's two kinds of there was two kinds of train orders. There was up here you see 19Y. So a Y order with like an SDY, signal displayed yellow, was a helping order. It helped the train do something. A 19R is the other alternative, where the signal is displayed in the stop position, and the R is for restricting. That meant that the order that was going to be given would restrict the train. So here's a train order from 1980 to engine SRS 119 at Hearst. And the body of the order says engine SRS 119 run extra Hearst to Nakina, dispatcher's initials. So SRS 119 is sitting at Hearst. He has no authority to occupy the main track until he gets this order. And now he's got a run order, and he can leave Hearst because he's got some authority. And it's a helping order because he was sitting at Hearst, couldn't do anything. So it's a Y order.
So in an extra, it's the engine number rather than the train.
Right. Yeah. If it was if it happened to be a, first, second, or third class train, it would be addressed to the train number. Like when we saw that Maynooth timetable, we were talking about train 60 and 61. Well, it would, instead of saying engine SRS 119, it would say number 60 or yes. Yeah. Okay. Oh, thank you. Okay, so the thing about a Y order is it's not going to restrict you at that location. So that allowed the train order to be hooped up on the fly. So here we see an operator out here, and he's got a train order hoop, and there's the train orders in it, and it means that the crew has already observed the train order signal and saw that it's a yellow signal. So they don't have to bring the train to the stop. They just have to slow it down enough that they can snag the orders on the fly. And I don't see it in the picture, but he would have another hoop there with a shorter handle on it to hoop up to the tail end, to the caboose. Okay, so yeah, and see the white flags here indicate that this is an extra, but he's getting, whatever that order that he's getting, it's going to help him. It advances him, gives him more authority, does something that assists him. So he doesn't need to stop. There's nothing going to happen at this location. It's telling him about something further down the line. That's right. Yeah, and well, I don't know if it's east, west, or north, south, but anyway, it'd be, yeah, extra 45, 88 west or whatever. Okay. Yeah. Go back one. Yeah, if you miss the orders, then you'd have to bring the train to a stop. CN certainly, like early on, like if you go back far enough to steam, the hoops, this train order delivery thing here is referred to as a hoop, and it was a hoop in the early days, a spring-loaded hoop, and the orders tucked in against, and the spring held them in place, and so the train would snag the orders, pull the orders out of the hoop, and then throw the hoop back out the window, and the operator had to walk the track to pick up his hoops afterwards. Lots of stories about, we hate this damn operator, so we'll hang on to it for a while and carry it a quarter mile down the track or whatever. By the time this picture was taken, and by the time I was an operator, CN had gone to this style of, I call it a Y hoop. I don't know what other, but it has a string, and there's a bit of a pressure point here that keeps the spring taut. But once your arm went through there and snagged it, you pulled it off that hook. And so no more operator chasing a hoop. I'm not sure what year they came in, but I would say probably about the time of the diesel era. Again, you might have even detected already, but I have a little bit of a excuse me. I have a bit of a prejudice. I was, born and raised a CN man, so I notice things about CP that are different. And CP continued to use hoops for that the operator had to chase for many years, long after CN had gone to this style. Okay. Yeah, that's the other thing is you throw it off and it drops into the snow and have fun finding it. So the operators always had a spare supply of hoops. Okay. Okay, we're back at St. Anne's again, and you see a signal displayed red, which means the train is going to get some kind of a train order that restricts them. Okay, it's not going to advance the cause, it's going to hold them back. Next. So here's a 19R order. So you see the R, and don't ask me why they're if you go back in the rule books, there was 31 orders and there was 19 orders. The 19 orders were like 19 Ys, and the 31 orders were restricting, so like a 19R. For whatever, and I don't know where the 31 come from. I don't know where the 19 comes from, but eventually they did away with the 31 orders and had 19 Rs and 19 Ys. So, pardon me?
The 31's blue.
No, the orders were always yellow. I think what you might be thinking is like on, besides giving them the order, there had to be a clearance with it so that the train knew that he got all of the orders that were intended for him. So there'd be a clearance form that went with it, and it would say to number 72, and then list the orders that he got at this location, and they were greenish blue, the clearance forms. So okay, so we got a 19R here issued to number 273 and to the extra SRS 119 West at Hearst. Number 273, engine 1395, run 1 hour late, Hearst to Nakina. So the restriction here then is that the dispatcher is telling the train that he's to operate 1 hour late. And that happens to be the entire subdivision, Hearst to Nakina. So that's a restricting order for number 273, because he can't follow the timetable. He's got to add an hour to all of the times in the timetable. What that actually is a helping order for 119, because he now knows that he doesn't have to clear 273 on time. He needs to clear them 1 hour late. So it helps 119, but the first named train here is 273, so it's an R order. No, he can't. His like if he's at Hearst, he has to, like if he was due out at 2 o'clock, he can't leave before 3. So you have to sit there for an hour. And once he got on the road, then he's operating. Well, he should be operating at normal speed, because it takes so long to get 5 hours to get over the road, and if he started an hour late, he should end an hour late. So he basically runs at normal speed, but he's always 1 hour late. Okay. Not much you can do modeling unless you want to get into, I know you guys use card systems to tell you what cars to switch. Well, now you're capable of issuing running orders to your trains. Okay, this one I just thought I'd throw in for fun. An unusual signal here. Anybody care to venture what that signal is? Sorry? Yeah. Well, and I'm sure the mechanism is, but I forgot, I guess, when we looked at the menu sub, I meant to show you I think there was some flag stops in there, but in this case, Burlington was a flag stop. Burlington, not Burlington West by this time. Burlington was a flag stop for certain trains. On a principal subdivision like the Oakville sub, that wasn't all that common, but for example, on the Transcontinental Main Line, there would be a number of flag stops. So this is a flag stops signal, and instead of flashing red like your crossing protection, go to the next one. And here's Mike for your next project on your station. If you were at a flag stop station, if there was an operator on duty, he would do it. Otherwise, there was written instructions that if you wanted to board there and train 273 could be flagged at that location, there was a bracket on the front of the station, and you hung this flag on it. So, hence a flag stop. That's where the name comes from. And the colors of this flag are, that one's kind of soiled a bit or yellowed, but anyway, they're yellow and green. And so those are the colors that were at Burlington in that flashing signal. Instead of making people put out flag, there was a button you pushed if you wanted to stop the train, and that wigwag up there would flash green and white, green and white, green and white, and the train coming along that had the flag stop there would say, "Oh, we're going to be flagged today." So put the brake on, and there was he'd call back to the tail end where we're going to make a stop at Burlington, and so open the doors. Good question. I'm not sure. I never used it. Sorry?
Maybe the conductor reset it before he got back on.
Yeah, it could very well be, because there was crossing protection where the conductor had to start it at Brampton, for example, before the train pulled out. So yeah, it may have been the conductor's responsibility to take the flag down or to stop the flashers. Mike?
Canada West 2009, and then again in 2006, and from Toronto to Vancouver, we had a stop in Capefield to refuel, and then a crew change in Winnipeg, and then a stop in Edmonton, and then finally Jasper, and then across the country. But we had one other stop. This flag would have been used, it was in Northern Ontario, the canoeists.
Yep.
Stopped Canadian, so they could board with their canoes.
Yeah.
It was quite surprising.
Yeah, well, and that wouldn't have happened years ago when there was, like I don't know whether you were on the CN route or the CP route.
It would have been CN, I think.
C-
CN
C-
had- we
yeah,
were
okay.
second-class train Canadian, man. We were in the hole a lot.
Yeah. Well, there's a reason they put you in the hole, because you went through the siding a lot faster because of the length of your train. And I know that, I'm just saying because I know how the dispatchers think, and why you have a 6,000 foot train slink through the siding at 15 mile an hour when you can put the passenger in and out much quicker. So it comes back to the old superiority of trains, not exactly following the concept, but that was the reason they did that. Yes, there in years ago, like when the Canadian was on the CP route, or it was the Supercontinental on the CN route, you didn't stop that train for nothing. There was no flag stops because there was a secondary train that could make those stops. So on the CP, it was the Dominion, and on the CN, it was the Panorama or the Continental. So those are the ones that had the flag stops. But by the time you traveled, there was probably no secondary train. So, and I can remember listening on, as an operator, listening on the phone back in the days when the Supercontinental was running, and some sectionman at, Minnepuka or something, some weird named station would come on and ask, I need to go to town. Can I get a stop on the Supercontinental and or train number one, I guess, because they wouldn't use the passenger jargon. Anyway, the dispatcher said, "Oh my God, no, I can't stop that train," because he'd have to record it in his timesheet. But he said, if you're at the West Switch at his time, I might have a little difficulty getting the signal, and that was that was code for be there, ready to board. But I can't legally stop that train. It's number one. It's the crack train across Canada. So, okay. Okay. All right. Well, that answers that question. I thought I never got into using it, so I wasn't sure, but it only made sense that the crew would cancel it. Finally, we're going to get to signals. Okay. The need for a signal system. As the 19th century progressed, trains got heavier, longer, and locomotives got bigger and faster. The density of trains on a given line became significantly greater. The likelihood of overtakes became more pronounced. As additional lines were constructed, there was a need to safely cross one another. So to sum up those two things, the Mustang needed to be tamed, and hence air brakes and signals. One of the most common accidents at that time without signals was rear end collisions, and depending on on the type of equipment, you ended up with telescoping that you have here. And I think this is a CP train, and that's not my bias. I think that's where the picture actually came from. But anyway, there's been a rear end collision here. And so it was, there would be either like and there was rules about, you know, running out of flagman and all the rest of it if you broke down to stop a following train. But, you know, fog and dark, you didn't see the flagman and you ran into the rear end of the stop train or whatever. And it was fairly common. So there was the Mustang needed to be tamed. They were, you know, fast and heavy at that point. And so this is the kind of consequences. Okay. So I said, you know, there was, like I talked about tail end collision, so that's obviously on the same railroad, but we're going to talk first about interlocking signals. I don't know why this doesn't show very well as green. It almost looks like a signal that's extinguished, but anyway, that's supposed to be green. So the signal system is allowing a train to move across here on a clear signal. So yeah, so the point here is, you know, how to get one railway across another without bringing all trains to a stop, because we talked about the non-interlocked diamonds where we had stop signs or smash boards or whatever. So now we want to get a system that's going to speed up the movement of trains. So you put a signal system at the diamond. So you spread up the whole process. In some cases, these diamond signals were controlled by the dispatcher, but in most cases, they were automatic. And so there was a signal plant there, you know, and what it did was when you approached the diamond, the signal system picked up the fact there was a train there, and the system would look around like the guy that walked to the diamond and say, no trains on the opposing track, pop up a green signal and away you went. Yeah, I'll cover that off when we get down to the details of the signals, but yeah.
Just highball, would that be far enough up the track that the train could still be at speed? Or
every diamond had a specified track speed. Some of them were 50 mile an hour. So if you had the clear signal, you could go 50 mile an hour. Others, you know, might be 35. So you'd have to slow down to 35, but you didn't have to stop. So you expedited the whole movement.
But you also have advanced signal.
Not right here. You're getting to my next slide. So we sped it up. He's still got to approach this thing prepared to stop. But then once he has vision of the clear signal, crank her out and away we go. So how can we improve on that? We put the advanced signals out to show the approach. So they did a much better job of getting the green on this one. So this guy comes along, he gets long before he gets to the diamond, he gets a clear approach signal and he knows he's good to go. There's a, you know, I don't want to bother you with, with a lot of jargon, but the ones that are outlined here as the interlocking limits these are often at a diamond, they're referred to as a home signal. And this will be the outer advance approach signal. There's different names used to refer to them. But the thing is, he can go, now he knows he doesn't have to sneak up to the diamond and see what kind of a signal he's got. He's already been told it's clear. Okay, and here's a signal system showing a double tracks. One railway is double track, the other is single. So you see the additional signals here. So again, we've got this guy has a clear approach and a clear signal, and he's gone. The others, these are all red, and these would be red as well. Okay, so I did kind of mention, I guess I got ahead of the story. I talked about controlled signals and automatic signals. So I got a bit ahead because the next slide talks about interlocking signals being controlled by Lieberman. So here we have a diamond going across here. Not sure what that guy does because I don't see a crossing here. Well, no, maybe there's a crossing there. I don't know. Anyway, this is the interlocking tower, and in the interlocking tower, there's a Lieberman, and he controls those signals that we just looked at via levers and rods that he would throw. That and there's doesn't appear to be any switches involved in this particular case, but often the Lieberman also controlled switches. So he would, and there was a whole sequence of how he had to throw the levers. Like if he was going to clear a route, the switches had to be lined for the route before he'd be able to move the interlocking lever to clear the signal. No. Possibly, yeah. I'm not sure. Yeah, it kind of looks to me like a crossing signal, but God only like. I mean, it's grade separated. There's a bridge here, but anyway, I picked. I don't know where the picture came from, so I can't tell you what was there. But I wanted to show an interlocking situation with rods. Next. So here's a view inside an interlocking tower. There's a display board up here, and you can see that you've got a double track railroad that has a junction here and then goes through the diamond, and then you've got a single track line, and there's a connecting track here between the two, and then you've got this mass of levers here. And the calendar's always helping these pictures. This was taken in 2012. Anyway, you see that some of the levers are different colors, and that probably indicates like it might be orange for switches and blue for signals. So he would line the route and then he would try to clear the signals. So yeah, switches and signals. Okay, and I think in that picture. There may or may not have been rods. It may have been electronic signals, like when you threw the lever, it sent a code out to the switch to throw or whatever. It could be either. Okay, so we talked about train order signals already, and while to the non-railroader, they looked like semaphore signals, and they're kind of made like them, but not quite. And so now we're going to talk about real live semaphore signals. So this is an example, and you can see a diamond crossing through here, and this is signal displayed red or stop. If you look really careful, I'm sure the Zoom people can't see this, but anyway, the upper blade here is in the upper quadrant, so it's been cleared for a guy to go across the diamond. But that's a semaphore signal there. The blade on the home signal is the same as the blade on a train order signal, but the whole mechanism here is a different shape. There was quite a curve to the train order signal. Okay. And the outer approach signal to the diamond, you have a single blade, and we're going to get to that question of yours about why 1 versus 2 in a bit, but this is another example. Anyway, the outer signals were sharpened at the end, so they could be distinguished from the home signal, I guess, but they were pointed. Yeah. That's just the sunlight is shining through the lens, but the lamp is, you can see the cord, the hydro line going up here it's actually behind. That's the red signal there. The lamp is mounted behind there. Remember that this is a day signal and not a night signal at this point. Yes. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Again, I don't know the dates, but semaphore signals disappeared somewhere along the piece. Probably. I mean, there was a few examples around, in the 70s or 80s, but they were fast disappearing and being replaced by searchlight signals. But not so much. Next slide. Not so much in some places. Here's a picture I took at South Station, Boston in 1976, and you're just amazed at semaphore signals governing the movement. Now, there are dwarf signals in the picture, so they were used to tell them some things, but they've got all these semaphore signals. And if you notice where the lenses and stuff are, somebody asked earlier about upper and lower quadrant. CN and CP, well, I don't know the timing, but very early on, maybe back in the Grand Trunk days, they used lower quadrant signals. But by the time CN was formed in the 1919 or whatever, they were all upper quadrant. But these signals appear to me to be lower quadrant. None of them are at anything other than stop, so it's hard to tell. But because I can see lenses on the lower side, I suspect they. So it's the same thing. Like, well, not quite. Stop, caution, and clear. So they drop. I think part of the reason that there was, the Canadian roads used upper quadrant is they were easier to see against the sky, as opposed to, something that, and to me, when the lower quadrant is at clear, it never quite gets completely down. It's always just a little bit out. Anyway.
The other thing with the link pointing up, if something breaks, the signal will drop and stop.
Exactly. Yeah.
If something breaks, the signal drops to clear, which is okay.
Yeah. You're right. Yeah. 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 Yep. Okay. Okay, so we've talked about interlockings. The next subject we're going to talk about is automatic block signal system. So, or ABS for short, a series of consecutive block signals governed by block signals activated by a trainer engine or by certain conditions affecting the use of the block. A block is a length of track of defined limits, the use of which by trains or engines is governed by block signals. A block signal is a fixed signal at the entrance of a block to govern trains and engines entering and using the block. So let's talk quickly about placement of signals. Next. In the Canadian system, there's always an exception to the rule, but the idea is that the signal will always be mounted to the right of the track because the engineer sits on the right side of the cab. So this is a bridge structure here. So there's probably another set of signals, for those two tracks, but for the ones that we're looking at here, you've got the signal just to the right of the track. And this is meant to show you that it could either be a light or it could be a semaphore. cantilever type mounting. And finally, if you've got a situation where the signal doesn't apply to the track that it's to the right of, you'll set up a dummy mast. And so this indicates that the dummy mast is really for the near track, which is nothing. And then this signal applies to the track over here. So that's general arrangement of where you put your signals. I had one of these when I had the Newmarket sub in Toronto area around Parkdale and that, and there was a service track that the switchers ran up and down and went into all the industries. And it was because it had to go to the industries. The industries were all located over here, like to the right of the track. So the main line was over here. And so there was a dummy there. And we talked about lunar white, like how do you see the dummy mast at night? So that in that location, St. Clair Avenue, Parkdale, whatever, there was actually a lunar white on the dummy mast so that there was a night signal. Pretty rare by the time, that I was railroading. Okay, so as soon as you get into a signal system, the entire railroad that you're governing by the signal system has to have track circuits. So here's an illustration of a track circuit, and it comes back to the magnet, or in railway parlance, a relay that's held in position by a battery. And so there's actually a current, low voltage current through the track. If you grab the track, you're not going to get a shock. But there's insulated joints and a continuous circuit here, and a relay. And so in this case, the signal is green because the relay is holding this switch in the closed position. Okay. First invented around 1880, but didn't come into common use until 1910. Next. Okay, so here's a train in the block now and how that works. So you've got these insulated joints, but the wheels become part of the circuit. Okay. In effect, they create a short. And so because the relay is not getting energized, it releases the switch and drops the signal to red. I don't know if I explained that very well, but that's how a track circuit works. Oh, and I want to talk just briefly about how it's a fail-safe system, because the switch is designed like if the relay failed, it would bring the result in a stop signal, because the switch will drop. And if you've probably never been in a signal cabin when it's working, but you can hear this click, 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 click. It's all these relays doing their thing. And there's quite a snap and an audible sound when they're moving. Okay. That's right. Yeah. Yeah. And sometimes back up one. Sometimes again, if you want to get into really, heavy duty detail modeling, sometimes the battery boxes, there was literally I'll call it a barrel for lack of a better expression, but the track side, there'd be a barrel buried in the ballast with the batteries in it. More modern situation is there be a signal bungalow, and the batteries would be located in there. And the signal maintainer has a regular regimen of having to inspect those. In case of, like, most systems will take power from if there's hydro, like on the Kingston sub, there's hydro everywhere, so it'll take the hydro and have battery backup. But in a place like, you know, the Great White North, Horn Plain and beyond, there's no you know, often there's no hydro, and so batteries were the only thing that were making it go. Where was I going with that? Oh, I know what I was going to say was I want to go back to the ice storm, and like where you're using hydro, the batteries are a backup, and they'll keep operating for maybe 12 hours. But you know, and the hydro charges them. So that's why, like during the ice storm and on the Alex sub and other places, they had to put a signal maintainer at all of the crossing protection, and that because the batteries eventually gave out, and so there was nothing to activate it. And CN went around putting generators out at these locations and left them running and come back the next day. Even when they put a chain around them, they'd be gone. So there was lots of issues, but yeah.
For the butlers along the Mississippi River, not only do they use caves for batteries, but they have to put all their signal boxes on scaffolds.
Because
Pictures of putting signal boxes above the main flooding.
okay.
That's in the US.
Okay, so so you know, this is illustrated the need for insulated joints. So on the right here we have an insulated joint. So there's actually a fiber piece that goes in here to keep the two rails, like they expand and contract, of course, but it means that the rails can never touch one another. And so and if you notice the bolt pattern and everything here, the splice bar is not one large 6-hole splice bar, it's 2 3s. So again, there's no chance of hydro going across this insulated joint. But the other thing, and why signal systems can be very expensive, is that every piece of track within this signal system, you need to ensure that the circuitry is intact. So at a normal joint, they will put in a bond. There's several different kinds of bonds. This particular one illustrates a bond right on the ball of the rail, like on the side of the ball. More common practice at CN, at least, was to put a bond between the splice bar and the web of the rail at both ends. But you know, so when I say it's expensive, you got, you know, 100-mile subdivision that you decide you're going to put signals on, you got to bond every joint on that piece of railroad. Now with continuous welded rail, it's eliminated the joints and the bonds, so it's not as complicated today. But back in the jointed rail days, it was, you know, an expensive proposition to install it and maintain it. Okay, let me see before you move. Yeah. Oh, I guess the other thing I was just going to say is the type of insulated joint here. This is actually a plastic, heavy duty plastic piece. They can also be glued joints, so there'd be no bolts. The whole thing would be glued. Okay, we're getting there. You'll have to tell me how long this took. Anyway, so okay, so this, we're talking ABS right here. We haven't got into centralized traffic control yet. So here is a train trundling along in automatic block system, and there's signals in the field, and so a following train coming up here, like the signal system, as he advances, the signals follow him, like in terms of they change colors. Okay. And these are searchlight signals that we'll talk about in a few minutes. And all this track is bonded. There's no switches or anything involved in this particular situation here. Okay, next. Uh-oh. No, okay. So normal functioning of ABS. And this, sorry, this goes back to our rear end collision and taming the Mustang situation. ABS doesn't control trains and tell them, you know, that you're going to go in the siding or anything like that. ABS really provides rear end protection. Okay. So trains trundling along here, he's got a green, the signal behind the caboose is red, approach. And this guy coming along behind, he gets a green, and eventually he's going to, like if this guy stopped, this guy would get a green here, he'd get a yellow there, and then he'd come up to a stop signal. Okay. Yeah, so like as I was saying, ABS is most often used to prevent overtakes, resulting in rear end collisions. Okay. Signal meanings. So that we just saw the train going along and he got a yellow, and what's it mean? Yellow signal, proceed preparing to stop at the next signal. So he knows that this block is clear, but the next signal is likely at stop. Now he might get there and find it's gone to yellow because he's following a train ahead of him at the same speed. So the signals are always changing, but that's the meaning of that yellow signal. Okay. So he gets to the red, and that stop, then proceed at restricted speed. So it's a stop signal, but it's not a stop and hold. And he knows that the block ahead is occupied. And restricted speed is a speed that will permit stopping within 1/2 the range of vision, but not exceeding slow speed, which is 15 miles an hour. Okay, so he comes to this red signal, he can stop, and then he can carry on. Why is he prepared to stop within 1/2 the range of vision? Next. Because of that. The train ahead could be just on the other side of the signal. And the system has, you know, he's got a red signal there, but he doesn't, he has to stop, proceed 1/2 the range of vision. The range of vision is only feet here. So he's got to just sneak across. Norm?
Another explanation I've seen is the other guy coming the other way is also going at the speed of stopping half the distance. If you're both doing it correctly,
You'll never collide. You'll just kiss. But that's opposing trains. And here we're really talking about following trains only. By the way, when I went to Gimli I didn't exactly train as an engineer, but I got the engineer training, and they put you on a simulator and they do exactly this with a heavy downgrade and a heavy tonnage train. And you think you're fine. And then this, shit, there's the caboose right in front of me, and boom, the screen goes blank, and ha ha ha, they have a big laugh. Okay, so that's ABS. Now we're going to go on to CTC. So centralized traffic control, which means the dispatcher controls most of the signals and the switches. Okay. And I draw your attention, and we're coming back to this, the increased number of heads on the signals. They could be 2, but in this case, this is the Kingston sub, I think. So it's 3, and I'll explain why there's different numbers of heads. But that single red that we saw earlier it stopped the train but didn't hold him. Okay. Okay, next. So when did CTC come in? I don't have a date exactly for the CP, but it's my understanding the very first CTC signal system in Canada was the CN between Truro and Halifax, put in because of the heavy wartime traffic, put in between, in World War II. this is the second installation of CTC on CN, and it's at Hornpain, and was put in 1951. And you know, as time went on, they expanded and expanded and expanded the systems and put more and more CTC. Okay. So this is an illustration of CTC system, single track, sorry. Single track CTC. Every signal that's outlined in red is a controlled signal. So the dispatcher has control over it. These signals here go back to what we were just talking about as the ABS system. These signals are controlled by the presence of a train in the block. The dispatcher doesn't see these on his panel and has no control over them. That varies depending on the system. Some, like the CN Kingston sub, the signals are approach lit. And if you've got enough straight track and you're in the cab and you're flying along at 80 miles an hour, you can actually see the signals popping up ahead of you. But like in Northern Ontario, they were constant lit. It's just a matter of preference. There's no consistent reason one way or the other. I guess one saves power and the other doesn't. But like on the Smith Falls sub here, that you know is, I don't know, VIA paid for not many years ago. It's a constant lit. And if you drive along Fallowfield Road, or go across the crossing at Woodruff, you can see the signals very plainly, and you can see whether the dispatcher has cleared a train. So these signals are always at stop unless the dispatcher has requested a signal. Yeah, okay, I think we covered everything there. And now this is a double track CTC system, and we kind of saw that in the first slide where you had this signal mast with 4 3-headed signals on it. So it's going from 4 track to 2. And over here, he's got a crossover to move trains from one track to the other. And again, you've got intermediate signals. And remember, we said that the outer signal at an interlocking gave the engineer advance information of what the next signal was going to be. Well, that's what these intermediates do here. They know, they respond to what the dispatcher doesn't control them. They're controlled by the signal system itself and the presence of a train. So some systems will only allow one train in the block at a time. Other systems will allow you to put another train in the block, and they'll be protected by these intermediate signals. So if the dispatcher, in theory, depending on the system, might have 2 trains following, and once the leading train gets to this location, it'll allow him to put a signal in because the rear collision situation is protected by the intermediate signals. More common though is exclusive use. You'll find the putting more than one train in the block is the kind of thing you find in the GO territory. Okay. Okay. So we need to talk a little quickly about speeds. So I guess I already told you about the ABS rule and restricted speed being half the range of vision, not exceeding slow speed. The railway has, they've got restricted. They have slow speed, which is 15 mile an hour, medium speed, 30 mile an hour, and limited speed, 45 mile an hour. So when you get into these really multiple, like 3-headed signals, it's all to do with trying to convey a speed situation. Like if you got more than one train in the block, you might want them to go no faster than slow speed. But if you could put them in there, and you might want them to be able to follow at medium or something. So the signal system will do all that. Next. Uh, how does a railroader learn signals? At the end, you're welcome to come up and have a look at these, but they use flashcards. And so you sit down in your hotel room or your office or somewhere, or in the lunchroom at the bunkhouse, and you go through the flashcards because you're gonna have to write a signal test. And so you show yourself that, and you have to be able to say what that signal means, or what the name of the signal is and what it means. So this signal is a clear to stop, proceed, preparing to stop at the next signal. And you've got, I'm going to get into the signals here, but by no means am I going to bore you with 90 signals, just to let you know that there's a lot of different combinations and permutations. So you're welcome to have a look at those after I'm done. Yeah, I guess that's probably, everything's gone electronic these days. So you, instead of sitting in the bunkhouse with your flashcards, you're probably sitting there with your cell phone or whatever. So I'm just going to touch on the meaning of the signals a little bit. Like I said, there's 90 different signals, and there's a deck of cards that has every one in there, and you sit there, and every time you get a wrong one, you throw it out. And you keep going, and then you go out your discard pile and say, Jesus Christ, I got a lot wrong here, and I better study these a little harder. and you keep those ones you screwed up handy all the time, because when you write the exam, you want to make sure you know what those damn things are, because you got the rest right. And by the way, a pass on the exam is 100%. So you can't, you can get, like for officers, you had to get 90% on the total rule package, but 100% on the signals. Train crews have to get 100 on the signals, and they can be as low as 80% on the rest of the rules, but that's the way it worked. I don't know. Okay, so 90 different signals, deck card. So we've got 6 signals here, all of them having the same meaning: clear signal, proceed. And what I want to point out to you here, because this is where we get into the whole idea of speed signals, is the green is on top, and that's the clue. Okay, if you got a 1 head, 2 heads, or 3 heads, the green is still on top, so that's what tells you it's a clear signal. Its location is what makes the difference. Okay, next. Okay, so we talked about the speeds. There's track speed, clear signal. We'll forget restricted for a bit, but there was limited 45 miles an hour, and then there was medium and slow. So in this case, the green is not on top. It's been demoted. It's in the middle now. And so that tells you that's a medium signal. So 30 miles an hour. What they did in, I mentioned limited. Initially, when they went to 45 signals that indicated 45 miles an hour, they put an L on the signal, which told the engineer that's, even though it looks like a medium, it's actually limited. But they improved on that over time, and a limited signal. And you'll see this if you go to Fallowfield Station on the signals, because the turnout at where Smith Falls and the what the hell is the other sub? Anyway, at the junction there, it must be a 45 mile an hour turnout, because you'll see a flashing green. And that's what they did to get to the medium, was took the medium type signal with the light in the middle, but they made it flash. So that gives you, that makes it a limited 45-mile-an-hour signal. Yeah, federal. Yeah, Beachburg. I couldn't think of Beachburg. Okay. Next. Okay, so here again, we keep demoting that green. He gets lower and lower on the signal mast, okay? And now it's on the bottom. So now we're talking 15 mile an hour. And the indication is slow speed within interlocking limits and through turnouts.
The speed limit is for the entire train. So if you got a 12,000-foot train, it's up
Yeah, that's right. Okay. Okay, well, this chap has gone somewhere. So back in the ABS discussion, we had just single aspect signals with the red. In this case, it's the signal has two reds, but they're staggered. Okay, so that's still a stop and proceed. So stop, and then you start motoring, but not exceeding 15 mile an hour, and be able to stop in half the range of vision. Next. So in order to stop a train, you have to have a double red, and they have to be stacked. What's Bill, is it? Bill, if you've got a moment, here's the explanation you were looking for. Okay, just go back for a second. You didn't see the other one. So in the ABS, we had the ones I illustrated had a single head mast. This is still an ABS signal. It's got two, but the important thing is that the signals are staggered. They're on either side of the mast. In order to stop and hold, not allow the guy to go beyond the signal, yeah, you need it. It takes a double red stacked like this. So that's why there's multiple heads. So that's a stop signal. And I'm not going to get into a bunch of exceptions. Dwarfs behave a little bit differently. You can have a single light on a dwarf, but because it's on the ground, it's a stop signal.
And I have a single with a underneath it.
Yeah, no, that's right. Again, one of the difference between CN and GPR is that they used an ABS system. Western Pacific was another railroad that did it. They used ABS in single track. CN only used ABS in double track. So on the Chalk River sub or whatever, two trains could meet, and one of them would have a single head signal, but with an A below, meaning absolute stop. So if that one's at stop, you ain't going through it. The A overtakes the restricted rule, and that's how CP accomplished their meets on the Chalk River. But it's not a system ever used by or that I'm aware of on CN. Okay, we're almost done. Okay, we're going to talk a little bit about. We talked about semaphores and train order signals and so on. Forget. I thought I had a date here on when the searchlight was invented, but I don't see it here. But the searchlight, like again, it's the evolution of technology and trying to come up with with lenses and that could. That had and it comes back to Felicity's point a little bit, like irrefutable day signals. Okay, so the searchlight signal has lenses and prisms and so on that focuses the light and creates. You can actually photograph the beam. The beam is so strong so that it's an irrefutable day signal. The searchlight signal has, I think, been around about 100 years. Anyway, highly concentrated beam. Okay. So, you know, these are sort of typical searchlight signals that I'm sure we're pretty well everybody's familiar with, and a dwarf version. And so you might ask, well, what creates the color in the searchlight signal? So there's if you take it apart, you'll see that there's a movable roundel in here, and there you can see the magnet and motor mechanism here, and this piece actually moves, and the signal itself is a white light. It's a clear bulb, and the color is created by moving a roundel in front of the beam. Okay, so there's moving parts here, and while it served the railways extremely well, I shouldn't, especially on Zoom, because there's movable parts here. They pretty much they're phasing out the searchlight signals that have, you know, stood the test of time for years and years. They shoot them up, and so then the thing doesn't move.
And Doug, I remember asking Jacques Toulon this question, being a signal maintainer. The image to the left,
Oh, sorry.
The image to the left showcases the signal as if, and then counted right up to the signal. So you should be able to see it right up to the moment you pass it. The crew must be able to see it.
Yes.
Most lights you might not see it if you look up.
Yeah, if you get too close to it or whatever. So, and I you know, I talked about prisms and all the rest of it. Even this, and I'll pass this around, or you can, or leave it for you to come up and look at later. If you look through that, that concentrates the light into a single hot spot. And so that's an example of a roundel. You know, they were typically glass, but, you know, again, technology, you know, that one's made of plastic. The other thing about this, I guess, like this is kind of weighted or whatever, and so the fail safe is always red. Like if it takes energy and relays to make it move, it's you know, it's weighted towards the bottom, so it stays in the center position, and so it's fail safe. If the power goes out, it's still it'll show red. So always the most restrictive signal.
So if
Okay.
someone's damaged the lens and insurance, stop them.
Yeah, if a signal is improperly displayed, the crew comes along and sees a signal. It could even be as little as the mast has been struck by something, or, you know, kids have been swinging on, or God knows they couldn't pull it out of the ground. But anyway, somehow you know, if the thing is on a tilt or whatever, the rules say that it's you know in your head what the most restrictive signal that thing is able to display, and that's how you're governed. And then of course you get on the radio and tell the dispatcher this signal looks damaged, or somebody shot the light out of it, or whatever it happens to be. Okay, we'll very quickly we'll get into. I told you the dispatcher controls switches and signals. I don't know how many of you have been out in the field and seen a dual control switch, but this is a dual control switch. So this switch is controlled normally by the dispatcher, but there's circumstances, and you might have, you know, if you're a scanner kind of guy and you've got, you've heard the dispatcher, you'll get him saying, giving the crew permission to use the dual control switch in hand position. And that might be because there's snow in the switch and the points won't close, so the dispatcher can't get a signal. So the train comes up, it gets a stop signal. Hey, dispatcher, how come I don't have a signal here? He said, I can't get the signal. Could you go have a look at the switch? Or it could be ice, snow. Kids might have put stones in it, and so the switch won't go over anything. So this is a dual control switch, and this is actually the switch handle here and you unlock it all, and then you move the handle back and forth to mesh the gears, and then you're able to throw the switch manually. And once you've got it in the position that you want it in, like you were going to take the siding, we'll say, then you put it back on power, and the motor will whir and lock it into place. And the dispatcher will see that on his panel that the switch is now functional, and he can line the signal over it. Yeah. So, okay. And I said the searchlight signals are being phased out because they've got that movable roundel in them. And so this is the latest in signals, and every head has all three colors in it. And it's everything's electronic. There's no movable parts. The computer tells, there's three bulbs, and and it tells the which bulb to light up. And my guess is today they're probably LED. Yeah. Okay. And we're down to the last slide. Hooray. So I kind of given you here's what the signal system is typically in Canada. There are other signal type systems, the most famous probably that you might recognize, but if you're modeling the PRR, you can't put searchlight signals in. You have to use these position light signals. And the easiest way to remember what they're displaying is to go back. Tensi put this in, and it's modeled after the semaphore. So semaphore straight up, clear. Diagonal. I guess, yeah, we don't, well, this one's, it's got an extra set down below. But anyway, if it was just by itself diagonal, it's like, just pretend it's a yellow, even though it's white. and then if it's horizontal, three white lights in a horizontal, it's just like your semaphore saying stop. That's the easiest way to remember it. You come over here to the B&O had a, this is position light signals, but they're all white. B&O also had a position light signal that were colored. And so you've got reds and greens and whites, and I'm not even going to attempt because I don't know what all that mumbo jumbo means. But anyway, there are other signal systems out there, but you won't find them in Canada. And that's it.